I'm a 27-year-old woman named Mara, and I've waited 5 long years to tell this story the way it actually happened. Juliet and I grew up like sisters, or at least that's what everyone liked to say. We were 6 months apart, lived 10 minutes from each other, and spent every major holiday, birthday, and weekend under the same roof. Our mothers are sisters, and they practically raised us like twins. But anyone who paid attention could see it. Juliet always had to be louder, flashier, and somehow more important than everyone around her. I was the quiet one. I studied hard, stayed out of trouble, worked retail jobs during high school to save up for college. Juliet floated through everything, skipping classes, dating older guys, picking fights with teachers. But she had this way of turning everything into a performance. She could cry on cue, twist a story mid-conversation, and somehow get away with it. People either believed her or didn't want to deal with the mess she'd make if they didn't. After high school, I moved to the city for college on a partial scholarship. I chose environmental sciences. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I juggled classes, waitressing, lab hours, and tutoring. Meanwhile, Juliet took a year off to figure things out, then enrolled at the local state college. She stayed home, still went to the same bars from high school, still expected attention every time she walked into a room. By the time I was in my final semester, I had mapped out my entire graduation plan. I booked a banquet room at a small Italian restaurant I used to work at. Nothing fancy, just 25 people, good food, a short thank you speech. I paid deposits early. My parents offered to cover decorations and drinks. I spent hours making invitations, hand-addressed every envelope, even arranged a carpool for our older relatives. 2 days before the ceremony, Juliet showed up at my apartment with a gift bag and the fakest smile I'd ever seen. She hugged me like we were best friends, said she was proud, and handed me the bag. Inside was a lavender-scented candle, a graduation card with my name spelled wrong, and a keychain that said the future is female. I knew something was off. She never did anything without a reason. The next morning, my phone started buzzing nonstop. Group chats were exploding. Someone had posted a video of me giving a class presentation, but the audio had been spliced to make it sound like I was mocking a professor who uses a wheelchair. It was clearly fake. The original video had been recorded for a disability studies course, and I remembered every second of it, but in the edited version, I looked smug and cruel, and it spread fast. Family members started texting me, saying they weren't sure if it was a good time to celebrate or that maybe I should lay low until things died down. One of my uncles flat out unRSVP'd. Even my own godmother, who I thought had my back, said she didn't want to get caught in the middle of drama. That's when I started digging. The Instagram account that posted the clip had no followers and no posts besides that one video. But when I used a password reset link, the recovery email flashed on the screen for half a second, Juliet's old Gmail, the one she used in middle school. I remembered because we once shared a Netflix account and it was her backup login. I didn't call her, I drove straight to her place. She opened the door wearing pajama pants and holding a smoothie, acting confused like she hadn't just ruined my life. When I told her what I found, her eyes widened like she'd rehearsed it. She said her account was probably hacked, that she hadn't used it in years. Then she started crying and saying she'd never do something like that to me. Her mother, my aunt, showed up in the doorway a few minutes later. She asked me to leave, said we should talk when things had calmed down. I told her about the email connection. She shook her head and said maybe I misunderstood, and that it wasn't worth breaking up the family over some teenage mistake. My parents tried to stay out of it. My dad offered to still come to the graduation dinner if I wanted to go through with it. But it wasn't the same anymore. Everyone else had dropped out, and the entire event felt poisoned. So I canceled everything. I asked the restaurant to keep the deposit as a tip. On the day of the ceremony, I walked the stage alone. My parents were in the crowd, along with 5 friends from college. Nobody from Juliet's side showed up. Afterward, I told everyone I was fine. I shared a couple graduation pictures online and thanked people for their support. I didn't fight with anyone. I didn't respond to passive-aggressive texts. I didn't block Juliet. I just stopped talking to her directly, though she never removed my access from the old event tools she once asked me to manage. But I didn't forget. I saved every message, every email. I screenshotted the recovery email screen and stored it on 3 separate drives. I didn't know how or when, but I knew one day she'd graduate too, and I'd be ready. And when that day came, no one would show up for her. After graduation, I moved back into my parents' house and started working at an environmental compliance firm about 30 minutes outside the city. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid steadily, and the manager was someone I'd interned with before. I kept my head down, showed up early, and focused on rebuilding my credibility. A few months later, Juliet dropped a surprise announcement at a family barbecue. She was transferring to my college. Not just the same university, but the exact apartment building I'd spent 4 years in. She claimed she wanted to follow her passion and had settled on public relations as her new calling. Everyone clapped. Her mother cried. I poured myself a drink and stayed quiet. Later that night, I texted her a simple congratulations. She sent back a row of heart emojis. That was the last direct contact I ever had with her. From that point forward, I made sure every interaction went through other people. I stayed polite, warm even, and didn't bring up the graduation incident at all. I let her keep thinking she'd gotten away with it. She started tagging me in random social posts again, like we were best friends. I ignored them, but I watched everything she did. Juliet had a habit of bragging, especially online. She started a blog for her PR coursework and filled it with bright graphics, half-baked project ideas, and vague client shoutouts. She even uploaded testimonials from fictional brands. I started saving everything. I created folders by year, copied the posts to local drives, even screen captured her Instagram stories whenever she visited a corporate office or claimed she had a new internship. Whenever she mentioned a person, professor, peer, client, speaker, I added their name to a spreadsheet. I signed up for alumni newsletters and workshop updates from her department using a secondary email. I tracked who was speaking at which events, who sponsored which panels, and which internships were being promoted through campus channels. A year in, I saw that she was using logos from real companies in her portfolio presentations, companies she never worked for. One was a nonprofit I had connections with through my firm. I sent a casual inquiry to the nonprofit's volunteer coordinator, framing it as a fact check for a class article. They responded quickly. They'd never heard of Juliet and were not happy that their logo had been used. They asked for the screenshots. I provided them, anonymously. At a family get-together that summer, Juliet cornered me in the kitchen and asked for help updating her LinkedIn profile. I agreed. I plugged in my laptop, connected to the Wi-Fi, and started typing while she narrated her job history. I recorded the entire screen using background software, capturing every made-up job title and exaggerated award she asked me to include. She smiled like we were sharing a secret. I smiled back. By the second year of her program, her professors started to notice inconsistencies. A friend I'd met through alumni mixers mentioned that someone in the public relations track had been flagged for copying from a professional campaign. I didn't say anything directly, but I mailed in a packet to the department chair, printouts of her plagiarized blog posts with side-by-side comparisons to the original materials. I left out my name. Around the same time, I submitted a second anonymous email to her program advisor. I pointed out that the testimonials on her site didn't appear to be from real companies and that several paragraphs were identical to public press releases from Fortune 500 brands. I didn't accuse her of anything. I just asked if this kind of reuse was standard practice in her program. 2 months later, I heard through a cousin that Juliet had been called into a meeting with her department. She told everyone she was being targeted by jealous peers. Her professors didn't buy it. She was placed on academic probation and warned that any further violations would result in expulsion. She barely finished her final semester. Her blog vanished. Her LinkedIn went private. At the next family function, she wore a graduation sash and smiled through gritted teeth. I brought her a small bouquet and handed it to her in front of our aunts. She hugged me like we were still close. I kept the video of that hug too. By then I knew exactly when and where her real graduation event would take place. She booked a winery just outside town, big enough for 50 guests. She made a Facebook group for it, shared the catering menu, and tagged every distant cousin she could think of. I already had a list of who she'd invited, and over the next few weeks, I started working on that list, one name at a time. Adetepa. After Juliet's academic probation ended, she rebranded like a politician in an election year. Her blog was wiped clean and rebuilt with sanitized captions, pastel branding, and blocks of motivational quotes about growth, forgiveness, and becoming your highest self. She added a section about overcoming online bullying and wrote a vague post about how success makes some people uncomfortable. She started posting more selfies with classmates, tagging professors, and reposting internship flyers like she was already a PR executive. 6 months before her graduation, she made her announcement. She was throwing a milestone bash, a catered dinner party and dance night at a private banquet hall near the university. It had a custom hashtag, printed invitations, and a theme, from drama to degree. Her parents funded it, excited to show off how their daughter had powered through adversity. I clapped when she told everyone at a family dinner. I even asked if she needed help with the invitations. She smiled and said yes. She gave me full access to the guest list, email contacts, and RSVP links. I guess she still thought I was harmless and useful when it came to logistics. I built a professional website with a clean design and RSVP page, just like she wanted. What she didn't know was that the RSVP form routed through a temporary forwarding server I set up using a custom domain. Any confirmation or follow-up emails passed through my filter before they went to her inbox. Every yes, no, or maybe came through me first. Once the invite list was finalized, I began my real work. I started small. There were a few former classmates she had publicly argued with over club leadership roles or group projects. At earlier family events, she'd told stories about them, sometimes mocking, sometimes cruel. I remembered those names. I reached out anonymously through dummy accounts, acting like I was doing a podcast episode about toxic classmates. I quoted bits of her old blog posts and let them connect the dots. 2 replied asking who had tipped me off. I didn't answer. But within days, 2 unfollowed her and 1 removed their RSVP. Then came the professors. One in particular was a favorite. He mentored a lot of students and had been invited as a guest speaker for her celebration. I forwarded him a copy of a deleted blog draft she had once posted, one where she mocked him for being out of touch, and more, into theory than action. I said I found it while researching her work history. He never responded to the email, but I saw her remove his name from the special thanks section on the site 3 weeks later. I moved on to family. A cousin who had just had a baby was planning to attend with his wife. I messaged them using another dummy email, posing as a concerned attendee. I wrote that the event was rumored to have weed smoking, and that one of the food vendors was known for spiking drinks. I said it might not be the best place for a baby. A few days later, I heard my aunt saying that the cousin had backed out and didn't feel comfortable bringing the child to a party like that. Next was the food. Juliet had posted a photo of a popular food truck she claimed would serve at the event. I contacted the owner using a third email and told him I was a freelancer writing about fake bookings in the catering world. I mentioned that someone using a check from Juliet's family had previously defaulted. I never got a reply, but 2 weeks later she posted on her story that the truck had canceled last minute and she was looking for options. Then the DJ. She'd hyped him up like he was a celebrity. I dug up an old Reddit thread where people criticized his style, then sent him an email pretending to be Juliet, using a spoofed address. I wrote that his boring sets would ruin her big day, and that her parents weren't impressed with the deposit terms. He blocked the contact and pulled out of the event. She posted vague complaints about sensitive artists and rebooked a student DJ who didn't even show up on time. A week before the event, Juliet sent out final confirmation emails to all guests with arrival details. I intercepted them. For most people, I adjusted the time to 3 hours later. For others, I added parking restrictions that didn't exist or said the venue had changed but would be updated last minute. Confusion built quietly, and I tracked it all from the back end. On the day of the event, I drove past the venue at the original time. The parking lot was almost empty. 2 catering vans stood idle. No balloons, no foot traffic, no excited voices. I circled the block twice and didn't see a single guest. Around 6 p.m., her Instagram stories began. There were videos of her standing alone by the welcome table, smiling too hard. Her parents clapped while she gave a toast to 5 people. Most shots were blurry selfies, and one was a panning video of the hall. Half the tables were empty. She tagged people who never appeared. A few friends posted that they'd gotten the wrong time or thought the event was canceled. The next morning, she uploaded a long caption thanking everyone who showed up, despite the chaos, and hinted that the venue had made scheduling errors. She ended with a quote about growth and grace. Comments under the post ranged from "sorry I missed it" to "wait, was this still happening?" I didn't reply to any of them. I just watched, quietly. After her graduation party flopped, Juliet disappeared from social media for about 3 weeks. No posts, no stories, no status updates. Then she came back all at once. New filters, new branding, and a new tagline. Her bios now read self-made communications strategist and redefining success through resilience. She started sharing quotes about betrayal and rising above hate, almost all paired with filtered selfies of her drinking matcha or walking through art galleries. Not long after, she launched a podcast. She called it The Reframe. The intro played soft music while she talked about healing after being wronged by those closest to you. She didn't name names, but the digs were obvious. She spoke about fake support systems, jealous cousins, and people who tried to steal moments that weren't theirs to begin with. It was all very vague and full of buzzwords, but also full of contradictions. In one episode, she said she'd worked with over 20 brands during her time at college. In another, she admitted she'd made up roles just to see if anyone noticed. I downloaded every episode and flagged timestamps where she contradicted herself or casually admitted to things she'd denied elsewhere. A few weeks later, she posted a story tagging a rising public relations agency in the city. It was a sleek office with a fast-growing client list, and she hinted at a dream opportunity in motion. That was enough for me to act. Through a professional mixer I'd attended the previous year, I had the contact of someone who worked in the agency's HR department. I sent an anonymous tip saying a candidate under consideration had been placed on academic probation for plagiarism and had admitted on her podcast to falsifying client work. I attached documents from her college's academic office and links to the podcast clips. 2 days later, Juliet deleted the story mentioning the job. She never posted about it again. About a month after that, we were both at a family barbecue. She stayed close to her mother most of the time, but eventually came into the kitchen while I was refilling a drink. She asked if I'd received any strange emails or messages recently, said someone was spreading lies about her, and it might be connected to college drama. I looked surprised, asked if she thought it was someone from her past, and even offered to help her trace the source. She thanked me but looked unsure. She didn't bring it up again the rest of the evening. That night, I created a burner account and sent her a message pretending to be a former classmate. I wrote that I still had receipts, mentioned something vague about the fake nonprofit she listed on her blog, and said it was just the beginning. She didn't respond to the message, but within a week she started cycling through usernames and switching between private and public profiles. I heard through a cousin that Juliet had begun snapping at people during conversations. She kept accusing relatives of gossiping behind her back and reportedly asked her father to review their Wi-Fi security at home. She asked her mother to stop forwarding emails unless she personally checked them first. She changed her phone number, but then switched back after claiming the new one felt off. Around the same time, she began consulting with a local image manager, someone known in small business circles for helping clean up online reputations. A mutual acquaintance told me Juliet showed up asking about clearing her name before a possible brand launch. The consultant ran a light background check and reached out to a few of her former collaborators. I sent a tip to that same consultant anonymously, attaching the fake nonprofit screenshots and a clip of her bragging on her podcast about making up company names. The consultant dropped her as a client before any contract was finalized. Their official statement was that her values didn't align with the firm's mission. The fallout trickled slowly. Juliet sent group texts to several of our cousins asking if anyone thought a family member might be behind everything. I replied to the thread saying, "It's probably just some random troll from college. Not worth the stress." Others agreed. She left the conversation without saying another word. After that, she started behaving differently. At another small gathering, she spent most of her time checking her phone, whispering to her brother, and standing with her back to the wall. She wore sunglasses indoors, even though the lights weren't bright. Her posts became more erratic, deleting then reposting the same picture multiple times, changing captions, turning comments off, then back on again. She no longer seemed sure which version of her own story people believed. Her blog stopped updating. The podcast went silent. One by one, her older posts disappeared from her profiles. Every trace she tried to remove had already been backed up in folders I kept in 2 separate cloud accounts. I hadn't just watched her dig a hole. I handed her the shovel. Juliet finally got her foot in the door at a marketing firm that handled brand image makeovers and public relations cleanups. It was a temp position, but she treated it like a major career launch. Within days, her social media was flooded with staged desk selfies, filtered pictures of office plants, coffee mugs with vague captions about power meetings, and story tags of the firm's name. She made sure everyone knew she was working in corporate crisis strategy, even though she was mostly doing admin work. The firm itself was small, 10 full-time employees, family-owned, with a strict focus on client privacy. I did a background check through their online footprint, followed their team accounts, and monitored who interacted with their official page. Their client base included a few beauty brands, one fitness startup, and a handful of real estate brokers. The firm was known for keeping things clean, and they took reputation management seriously. I sent a tip to their general inbox, anonymous, as always. Years of practice using throwaway identities and cloaked domains made it easy to stay invisible. I flagged that one of their current temp hires had a history of using nonprofit branding without consent and had previously impersonated a charity partner during college projects. I attached screenshots of her old blog with the stolen logos and referenced her academic probation status. I didn't accuse her directly. I phrased it as a concern about whether they'd vetted a new employee properly. The same week, Juliet posted a story tagging a skincare client the firm worked with. The photo was a flat lay of one of their products with the caption, "Love being part of the creative on this." I saved it, reversed the image, and found it was a stock photo used on the client's official page 6 months earlier. I contacted the client's public contact form through a burner account routed through a VPN. By then, I'd built a whole routine rotating IPS, dummy domains, the works. I asked if they had authorized her to post on their behalf. The response came back through a different source. They hadn't. The brand flagged the post and contacted the firm immediately. That triggered an internal review. Juliet was pulled into a meeting and told to stop claiming client involvement publicly. She deleted the post that night and unfollowed the client's account the next morning. But she couldn't keep quiet. During a client lunch meeting at a mid-tier cafe, she vented to a colleague about the firm's overreaction. She spoke loud enough that a nearby table, filled with people from the local business chamber, overheard every word. Someone from that group had a connection at the firm and passed the story along. I had already been recording her public content. When I saw the cafe's layout through geotagged posts, I pieced together the timing and audio patterns from background clips she had posted herself. One short video from her stories had muffled sound of the same lunch conversation. I cleaned up the audio and added a written timeline of how her social media behavior had violated company policies. I submitted the full package through the firm's internal feedback portal using their ethics concern submission option. It was marked as urgent, with attachments including her post history, the flagged client photo, and clips of her calling the firm's client policies stupidly outdated. 2. Days later, everything stopped. No more stories, no office posts, nothing from her work account. Her LinkedIn updated quietly, contract completed was listed under her role at the firm. The marketing company removed her from their tagged photos and unfollowed her personal account. I checked their team page a week later. Her name had never been listed. The next time I saw her was at cousin Nora's engagement dinner. She showed up almost an hour late, sat at the edge of the table, barely greeted anyone. Her phone stayed face down the whole time. A few people asked why she had left the firm so quickly. She said she had decided to pursue freelance consulting instead. She mentioned she was in talks with local startups and hinted that she had pivoted to being her own boss. I let her talk. I didn't say anything. That same week, she relaunched her blog. New domain, recycled layout, new bio claiming she was now a consultant for growth-focused startups and digital influencers. She had a portfolio section with 3 startup names listed as recent clients. I recognized 2 of them, small e-commerce shops from the local network I occasionally monitored for my firm. I messaged all 3 companies using different email accounts. In each message, I warned that the person offering consulting services had a known history of fabricating client work and had been under academic probation for plagiarism. I didn't include my name. I attached screenshots of her old site and links to her now deleted podcast episodes where she bragged about inventing campaigns for her portfolio. None of the companies replied publicly, but 2 weeks later, her blog vanished. The domain redirected to an error page. Her LinkedIn still listed her as independent, but the links under her portfolio stopped working. She had tried to rise again. I made sure every step she took crumbled quietly underneath her. Juliet had gone quiet online. Her posts dropped to once a week, usually a recycled quote about healing or silence being strength, always paired with a filtered selfie. No job updates, no new projects, just surface-level content. Then someone in the family group chat casually mentioned her engagement. She hadn't made it public, but the ring showed up in a photo during brunch with her mother. The caption said nothing about Callum, the man she'd met during her temp job, but the diamond did the talking. The engagement set off the usual wave of excitement. My aunt acted like Juliet was marrying into royalty. She told everyone they were planning an elegant garden wedding, outdoor ceremony, champagne welcome table, live string quartet, and over 200 guests. I pretended to be happy for her, sent polite replies, and waited for my move. A few weeks later, I got an email, save the date from Juliet and Callum. It came from a new wedding-specific email address, likely one of those automated services. I clicked the link, visited the site, and RSVP'd yes. Then I set up domain alerts for the wedding website, the hosting server, and even the custom email tied to it. If anything got edited, deleted, or glitched, I'd get pinged. Through a mutual friend from college, I found out Juliet had asked her old professor to officiate the ceremony, the same man she used to mock on her podcast. She once called him a roadblock for women, outdated, and someone who should have retired a decade ago. I had saved those clips. I clipped them again into a short highlight reel and emailed him anonymously, asking if he knew how she had spoken about him online. He replied using a different email address, thanking me and saying he had no idea. He declined the invitation by the end of the week. Her wedding website removed the efficient listing quietly. No announcement, just gone. A few days later, the seating chart page on the site disappeared too. When it came back, several names were missing. Mutual acquaintances had backed out, though nobody said why. I kept watching. Next, I turned my attention to the bakery. Juliet had posted months earlier about hiring a boutique cake artist known for custom fondant sculptures. On a hunch, I looked through old Facebook posts and found a comment Juliet made years ago after a different party. She blamed that bakery for undercooked pastries and claimed one of her friends got sick after eating there. It had been deleted, but I had screenshots. I sent them to the bakery through a new burner email, framing it as a heads up. They replied to someone else I knew, confirming they pulled out of the wedding. Juliet scrambled to find another vendor. Prices were higher. Availability was tighter. She started calling bakeries directly instead of booking online, something her mother mentioned during a family brunch. Then I tracked down Callum's sister. I found her through tagged birthday photos on an old account. She had posted a story weeks back of Juliet and Callum at a wine bar, writing, "Can't wait to welcome you to the family." I made a burner account that looked like a classmate's page, complete with shared music playlists and generic memes. Then I sent her screenshots from old group chats Juliet was in, chats where she trash-talked Callum's ex-girlfriends, calling them clingy and trash tier. I didn't say who I was. I just wrote, "She may not have changed much. Just in case you want to know who's coming into the family. That caused trouble fast." I didn't need confirmation. Callum deleted Juliet's latest engagement photo from his profile, and his sister removed all mentions of Juliet from her own page. A cousin who had dinner with Juliet's family said Callum asked her to cool it with social media until after the wedding. Juliet's posts slowed down again. The wedding hashtag disappeared from her bio. The rehearsal dinner was a week before the big day. It was held at a small wine venue downtown, just 20 people. I showed up in a simple dress, brought a card, and congratulated both of them with a smile. Juliet barely spoke. She gave quick responses, avoided eye contact, and looked like someone trying to calculate if they'd missed something. I handed her the card. Inside was a handwritten note wishing them love, and a tiny USB drive taped under the flap. She didn't know it yet, but that drive had 3 podcast clips and a list of fake companies she'd claimed to consult for. I didn't expect her to use it. I expected her to panic knowing someone had gotten that close. Every piece I moved, every tip I sent, every name I removed, it all brought her closer to the version of herself she worked so hard to fake. And the best part was, the real damage hadn't even started yet. The week of Juliet's wedding arrived carrying more tension than celebration. Family group chats slowed down, relatives quietly excused themselves from last-minute gatherings, and every time someone brought up her name, the room either went silent or changed the subject. Vendors were still shifting, and a few people mentioned that the guest list had gotten smaller. She didn't post anything publicly. No countdowns, no behind-the-scenes videos, not even a bridal shower recap. Just a single reposted quote about protecting your peace. I went to the rehearsal dinner like I'd promised. I wore a soft gray dress, brought a modest gift, and kept my voice low. Juliet hardly looked at me. She'd placed me at the far back corner table with 3 second cousins I hadn't seen since I was 14. No bridesmaid duties, no toast. Just a distant seat and a lukewarm chicken plate. It was her usual way, cutting someone out without making a scene. I stayed long enough to hear the timing for the ceremony, watch the staff run through the event schedule, and take mental notes on which vendors were still involved. She gave her bridesmaids personalized thank you notes. I smiled, said goodbye to her mother, and left early. That night, I logged into the wedding RSVP backend, the same one I'd helped design years ago for her graduation invite list. She hadn't changed the admin permissions. I used a timed email tool to schedule a message for 6:45 a.m. the next morning. The subject read urgent, venue update for Juliet Callum's ceremony. The message, sent from eventcoordinator.weddinginfo, explained that the original venue had suffered a last-minute electrical failure, and that the new location was a backup outdoor site 30 minutes away. It looked professional. It had a fake name, a working phone number that redirected to a voicemail box, and a custom footer with social media icons that didn't lead anywhere. I sent it to every guest who RSVP'd through the website. Then I shut down the forwarding address and cleared the logs. By 10:15 the next morning, I arrived at the real venue. Everything was dressed up perfectly, rows of white chairs, pastel flower arches, a string trio playing softly near the garden entrance. Its servers were placing champagne bottles and ice buckets. But the chairs? Mostly empty. A few older relatives wandered in slowly. A couple from Callum's side arrived holding a gift bag and looking confused. The parking lot was nearly bare. Juliet's town car pulled in at 11:05. She stepped out in a detailed lace gown, holding a bouquet the size of a small tree. Her makeup was flawless, hair pinned in a style I recognized from a Pinterest board she had once posted. She took 3 steps toward the aisle before stopping. Her head turned side to side. She was looking for the crowd that wasn't there. Only about 2 dozen guests had shown up. Her bridesmaids were missing. The college group she used to tag in every birthday photo was gone. No high school friends, no former professors, not even the coworker she once claimed was like a sister. Her mother whispered to the wedding planner, who started dialing numbers rapidly. The officiant stood stiffly near the altar, checking his watch every few seconds. Callum stood beside him, already sweating. Juliet stayed frozen for almost a full minute before turning and walking off. She didn't speak, didn't make a scene, just walked through the side entrance of the venue and disappeared. The music faded out. A junior staff member finally stepped forward and announced that the ceremony was being postponed due to a private emergency. There was a low murmur among the few seated guests, then silence. I walked to the gift table. Most slots were empty, just a few cards and a wrapped blender box. I placed my envelope right in the center. Inside it, a framed screenshot of the fake Instagram account she used during the graduation scandal. Below it, a typed message on ivory paper: forgiveness was never real. But neither was your spotlight. Then I left. No goodbyes. No pause to see the reaction. I walked down the gravel path and got into my car. Her story was done. That night, her Instagram went dark. The profile photo disappeared, all posts gone, and the wedding highlight reel she had pre-made was deleted before it ever went live. Mutual acquaintances started asking what happened. Someone posted on a private Facebook group wondering if the wedding had been canceled mid-ceremony. The answers were vague and contradictory. 2 days later, I was sitting in a cafe downtown when a table of girls behind me started whispering about the bride who walked out before vows were even exchanged. I recognized the description. One of them had been at the fake venue, stuck in the parking lot with 3 other confused bridesmaids. They never got a follow-up. They just went home. I didn't correct the story. I didn't add to it. I let it spread naturally. Juliet had once gone out of her way to ruin my moment by making me look like someone I wasn't. She did it with noise, with mess, with an audience. I returned the favor with silence. Not because I was above it, but because the quiet made it sting longer.